and welcome to Youth for Youth podcast by Mohanji Youth Club under our Crisis Management Project. This is a space where young voices come together to talk about real life challenges, real skills, and real impact. Today we will talk about first aid, about emergency, panic, courage, and responsibility, especially for young people. Because accidents don't send warnings. An emergency doesn't check your age, so we all need to be prepared for the first aid. Today, we are honored to have with us Dr. Malavika. She's currently working at the intensive care unit at Lisi Hospital in Kochi, and she has 2 years of experience in emergency medicine. So, welcome, dear Dr. Malavika.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Antonia.
We are very honored to have you here with us, and we are very excited
Absolutely.
uh, to speak with you today.
The same, likewise. I'm also very excited to do this podcast, and I'm also excited to share the knowledge and information that I can for the youth, from youth to the youth. So I'm also very excited. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to be on this podcast today and to share whatever information that I know. So thank you, Antonia, for the opportunity.
Thanks to you, we are really honored. Today we will cover why does first aid matter so much in the very first minutes before medical help even arrives. And actually, we will speak also what's the most common emergency involving in with young people and how often could it be handled better with if we have basic first aid training. So
All
we
right.
actually we can start. Would you like to share something before about you and your experience?
So, like you said, I have experience working with the emergency. So I see a lot of cases, especially like the most critical ones, which the first line of contact in the hospital would be the emergency department. So I can actually relate when it comes to the first couple of minutes with which we give a first aid, how that can impact a person's life. So I have seen that in first hand, and that is the reason why I was really excited to do this podcast in the first place because I would like to actually share and make everybody understand on how important it is to act in that first couple of minutes because it is the golden time to save a life, and it is very, very crucial. So that is one thing I would like to share. Yeah.
Thank you very much. We will start and like even if we're not doctors, it requires that we are prepared, all of us. So we're really
Right.
happy to speak about. So we can start with like first question would be like from your experience, why does first aid matter so much in first few minutes before actually medical help arrives?
So, as you know, maybe the first line of contact might not be the doctor. So, imagine a patient is collapsing, a person is collapsing. The first person to attend to that person might not be a doctor. It might be a normal person without any kind of medical experience. So, maybe the person might have, it could be just a normal, like it could just be that the patient just had like a fainting episode, maybe due to dehydration, or it could be something very severe like a cardiac arrest. So now the thing to do is in this case, what we expect is somebody to start a CPR for this patient. Now, why CPR? CPR is nothing but in a very simple terms to make you understand. Basically, you're going to be the heart of the patient. So because the heart stops completely during an arrest, and you are going to provide that from the outside with the maneuvers. So this is what a CPR does. Now, why is it very crucial? Because your brain cells and your heart cells, when there is no blood circulation happening, that is circulation happens when due to the heart. When the heart stops functioning, there is no circulation at all. So when the circulation stops, these vital organs are the first one to get, the brunt of it. And obviously, once the brain cells are compromised or the heart cells are compromised, it is very difficult to sustain life. So that is the reason why it is very important for you to intervene in the first couple of minutes as soon as possible. I wouldn't even say couple of minutes, as soon as possible, because that is going to save the person's life and also the outcome of the patient after he recovers. So that is why it is very important.
Amazing. It is critical that we know all these things and that we are aware and not scared if this kind of things happens because, like you said, we can save someone's lives. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing this awareness with us.
Yeah.
Can you share what is the most common emergency you see involving young people, and how often could it be handled better with basic first aid?
Okay, so as you know, young people, they're more, they're filled with adrenaline and they want to do a lot of adventurous things. So the main thing that we see is mostly road traffic accidents, mainly like motorbike accidents or car accidents, or maybe sports injuries even, because these are the most common emergencies that you see among young people. So now, how can we help in a situation like that? Now, definitely, when you have a road traffic accident, definitely, I mean, mostly you would start bleeding, maybe from the outside. And when you know there is a bleed happening, maybe you can stop that by, like, with a very simple thing, such as putting a tourniquet. Tourniquet, in the sense, you can even use your whatever cloth that you have just to tie above the wound so that it stops bleeding. And so that will reduce the blood loss for the patient, and that is going to save the life of the patient. So, such things, even though it's a very trivial thing, a very minor thing to do, maybe at that point, somebody might panic because it's a very normal thing to panic in situations like that. But that such a small, simple step can help save the life when it comes to a situation like that. So that is the most common thing that I have seen in practice, mostly like accidents and sports injuries. Sports injuries again, like or any kind of injuries, even fractures. Maybe you can put a simple splint. Maybe you won't have a splint available, but you can immobilize that part of the limb. 'Cause that can also save a lot of, maybe further damage that can happen due to mobilizing it a lot. What happens is when you see somebody having such a thing, maybe a fracture or something, you might mobilize it too much because you're also in a panic situation. So the first thing we need to do is be calm. Only with a calm mind can we do something which is right. Because when we are in a panic mode, probably even though we want to help, we might do the wrong things. So all these things are the ones which we can keep in mind when situations like this arise. Especially these are the situations that I have seen in the youth. So yeah, probably like stabilizing the fracture if possible with whatever make do you have. Maybe you just have a piece of wood there. Maybe with that you can immobilize, or even with, like I said, when there is an accident happened and then there is a lot of bleeding, you can just tie a simple tourniquet, just a simple cloth. You don't even need anything sophisticated there. You don't need a huge first aid kit there. But even such small steps can make a huge impact.
Wow, amazing. I feel like that panic is the worst thing that can happen. And it can, how can we, if you're panicking, what advice would you give to the young people, how they can calm their mind in that situation?
I think everybody panics, not just young people. For everybody, the first response to such a thing is panic. And I think that's a very normal response for us to have. But in situations like that, what I would say is, see, we panic more when we don't know what to do, more than what we know to do. Because when you have an idea on how to go about the situation, usually you calm down a bit. Because with experience, you become more calm, even for doctors for that matter, because as you get more experienced, that's the reason you become calm, because you know how to handle the situation. So even for a non-medical person, this is the same perspective. So, exposing yourself to such scenarios, in the sense, watching videos on such, when situations arise, like, because it can happen to anybody. Because we might always have that idea, okay, things might not happen to us, but we never know. So we should always be prepared for such emergency, like what to do in case of a road traffic accident, or even like about basic CPR skills, or maybe somebody is having seizures for that matter, what to do in a situation like that. So when you have it at the back of your head, exactly how to proceed, probably you get a little more calmer. But if you don't know anything about it, and that's when you start panicking. So I would say familiarizing yourself with situations might make you a little more calmer, because being panicked is a normal response, and that's not wrong. I mean, even if you know you might panic, but you might panic less. So I think this is the only way to go about to do the right thing at that situation.
Wow. Thank you. Yeah. So these trainings, if you're trained, then we will not panic. So we can learn how to be more calm and more like helpful to the people who are in these situations.
Definitely, yeah.
What first aid mistakes do you see most often that worries you as a doctor?
First aid mistakes. So yeah, what comes on the top of my head would be how people handle burns and snake bites mostly. So I have seen where people put ice, and that's the normal thing which everybody does at home. When you get burnt, you just put a piece of ice cube on top of it, not to do that because what happens there is already the tissue is injured where the burn has happened. So when you put ice, the blood supply is going to be compromised even more. So you don't need that. So putting ice is going to cause more harm. So other things I've seen is people putting ghee and toothpaste and whatever they have at home when it burn on the burn. So that is not a good thing to do because that's just going to make it even worse. Probably the wound can get infected. It's just going to make it worse, to be honest. So what I would suggest in such situation is just simple things. Just put it on running water for about 15 to 20 minutes. That's good. And yeah. So what I was saying is if you think if it is something major, go to the hospital. You don't have to self-treat yourself at home at all. If it's a simple burn, maybe sometimes what happens with, see, that is what during cooking or maybe while using, see, any kind of electrical appliances, if it causes burns, I think you should go to the hospital, no matter how small it is, because electrical injuries, you can never gauge the intensity of the injury because sometimes it might take time for it to manifest and maybe it could be very, what do you say, it could be fatal to the patient. So any kind of electrical injuries, please go to the hospital. But if it's a small one, maybe from a vessel, from a hot pot, or from a fire, steam, if it is not too big, then maybe just don't put ice, don't put anything, just put it on running water for some time. But if it's anything major, please go to the hospital. So this is one common mistake that I have seen. Then, okay, this might, I don't know how relevant it is going to be what I'm going to speak about, that is snake bite, because I also have experience working in a little rural and outskirts part of Kerala. So I have seen, see, usually when there is a snake bite, again, you don't have to put ice, nothing. You just immobilize that part. You try to just, like you can put a small splint again and maintain that part. If your hand is maintain it above the heart level. So this is what you need to do. But I have seen people get snake to show the doctor, like, okay, see, this is the snake that bit the patient, which is very dangerous for whoever is getting, for people in the hospital. So do not do such things because I have seen that happen myself. So rather, it's better if you, I mean, I know why they're doing it because they want to show the doctor which snake has bitten, which is good because that information is vital for treating, but we don't need the snake. So rather, you can just take a picture of the snake with your cell phone and just get the picture to us, and then maybe we can figure out which snake that is, and that will help us with the management. But getting the whole snake itself is not a very good idea. So that is, I have seen that happen once. So these are the things which I can think. There are so many. These are the common things that I've seen that happens. Yeah. So if you all these can be because see, this is mostly because of misinformation because and also with snake bites some kind of practices are there where they try to make the snake bite the wound again and try to make the snake suck the venom out, which is never happening in the first place. So there are a lot of practices like that. So these are all because of misinformation and misguidance that people have. So I think people should be, I mean, there should be a lot of awareness programs like what you're doing right now, such podcasts, so people are well aware on how to deal with situations. More than what to do, sometimes what not to do in situation. So that would help people to make the right choices situations like this.
It sounds very interesting to be a doctor with all the situations that you're seeing. I hope that we remember that we are not putting the ice and not taking a
Yeah,
snake.
yeah. That was, I mean, because see, ice is a very common misconception actually, because a lot of, I think even, because most of the people, I think, a lot of first aid comes from what your mothers and your grandmothers and, people at home teach you. The first thing, even like in my house, because I'm not coming from a proper medical background, my mom used to put toothpaste and I thought it was right in the first place, but later I realized it's not. And of course, after being a doctor, I even educated people in my house, no, don't do this. This is not good for you. But this is a common mistake. So these things can be avoided.
It's beautiful that we are spreading now these education, small tips and tricks that
Small
can
steps.
save our lives. Yeah. Would you like to share some real situation where early first aid clearly changed the outcome for a patient?
Yeah, actually, there has been a situation. While I was working in the emergency, we had a road traffic accident, and it took like the ambulance did not reach on time because of, I was in Bangalore, so that because of traffic situation and all, it was not the traffic. I mean, the ambulance could not reach like early as it had to. So, but luckily, the pedestrian who was there and who had, witnessed this, it was a two-wheeler which crashed onto a four-wheeler and a person had fell off, and he had a lot like a major bleed that was happening from his leg. So the pedestrian, like, he just used his t-shirt actually, he just tied his like about the wound, and because of that, we could actually save his limb because there was not a lot of major blood loss happening, and it was easier for us to manage as well. Because the main thing is when there's a lot of blood loss, the patient goes into shock, and it is again very difficult, when we have to manage shock and also the fracture and so many things. So when such a small step and such a vital thing was done by a pedestrian, that helped us too much actually to manage the whole situation. So that was one of the situations I can remember which helped us, a very vital one that also. Yeah.
Wow, amazing. And which first aid skill do you believe that every teenager or young adult should absolutely know, and why?
Okay. So I can't say one skill as such because there are so many things. But again, I can share one story. I was just recently traveling, and in the bus, there was this one patient who had seizures. And I was sitting a little ahead in the bus, and this happened right, like a little towards the back end of the bus. And I did not notice. So initially, before I went in, there were so many people crowded there, and then they would like, okay, let's give him water, let's do. And most, why I'm saying is mostly it was like young people in the bus for some reason that day. There were not a lot of old people. And then the first thing they wanted to do was give water to this patient, and also they tried to put something in his mouth. So luckily I was there on time, and that was not the right thing to do at that stage. So usually what you have to do in the situation of seizure, see, because I cannot say one skill, I will just say common things that you might need to know. So because seizures is something which is commonly encountered, and suddenly you can see somebody fall on the street and start having fits, like proper. And in such a situation, just put the patient in a like a in a sideway position, like we call it a lateral position, and that is basically so that whatever is there, the patient does not choke on his own saliva, and it opens the airway in a way. I mean, not properly, but it's better. That's the best way to put the patient when he's seizing. And also, when the patient stops seizing, maybe you might think he's getting better, but we call it as post-ictal stage. That is a very vital stage as well. You're not supposed to give anything at that point, even water. Because that day, apparently, that patient forgot to take his medication, and that guy, whoever was it was his friend with him, is like, let me give the medicine now. Wait, you need to give the medicine. Definitely, you need to. But sometimes when you drink water, because your muscle tone is still not okay, even though the patient has stopped seizing, his muscle tone might have not recovered. And maybe what happens when you have medication is it might go to your airway and can cause aspiration. So such a situation, just take him to the hospital. So in any situation, just put him in in a sideway position. Once he call for help. That's the main thing to do. Because we don't need to be a like we don't have to handle everything by ourselves. So I would say for any emergency, one thing common is, even though you don't know what to do, just call for help. Call the ambulance. Sometimes the paramedic people, they themselves will instruct you on what to do. Because even if you don't have an idea like on how exactly to proceed, they might give you instructions. So first thing is call for help or call somebody else who's around you. Everybody has a phone these days. So one of the people, either you or somebody else who can assist you, can just call the paramedics and they can actually help. Or paramedics or the hospital, whoever, and they can help you and they will assist you on how to go on the right way for that particular case. So that is one thing. So this is one thing I've often seen. This is the situation that the situation that I've shared right now is very recent. It just happened 2 weeks ago to me, so it's like fresh in my memory. But yeah, seizures is something which we encounter very, very commonly. And another thing I think I would say is definitely giving a CPR would be a good skill, because most people are very scared to give a CPR. Because like we've just seen it in movies. I don't know how many of the lay people have actually seen a proper CPR video. Mostly whatever we have seen are either on documentaries or in movies, and there are techniques and everything for this. So I would say like it's good if you know a proper CPR with proper technique, it can actually save a life. So, I mean, even if your technique is not good, it's still okay. It's better to do something than to not do something because not doing something might cause more harm to that patient. So, even if your technique is not good, if you're in doubt, you can definitely start CPR. So, again, that since like the problem is people are not confident, they've never given it before. Like I mentioned earlier, familiarity is the best way to give you confidence in situations like that. So taking such, there are so many, like these 1 day courses where they train you in CPR. So such things would be helpful. Like I said, it can happen to anybody. It can happen to somebody in our house. I mean, God forbidden, but it can still happen to somebody that we know or in our house, to a family friend. So I think this is one skill everybody needs to know how to give a proper CPR. Even if not a proper CPR, at least a basic level CPR. Yeah.
Amazing. And when we were speaking about CPR, that was my actually next question. So
Okay.
we can CPR is widely talked about, but rarely understood. That's why maybe
Hmm.
people are scared to do it.
Right.
What do you wish young people knew about it before facing a real situation, or if you can explain shortly, maybe uh,
Mhm.
what
Yeah.
would.
So, first thing, like, see, it's the same step for most of the situations when there is an arrest or any kind of situation, any kind of emergencies. First thing you need to do is make sure, like, before you do give the CPR or treat the patient in any way, make sure the scene is safe. This is the first thing you need to do because if the scene is unsafe for you to provide the care, you cannot do it because you cannot put yourself into jeopardy, right? You have to make sure that you are safe to administer the first aid in the first place. So that is one thing that you need to keep in mind. Second thing, like I already said, call for help. It's there is because in movies, one person single-handedly might give CPR and for hours and I don't know. But you cannot because if you actually try giving CPR, a proper CPR, you do get tired after some time because it is very tedious for the person who's administrating the CPR. So make sure that you call for help and there is somebody else to take over while you rest. Because you can alternate and do things like you can one person is giving the chest compression, other person can be maybe coordinating with the ambulance, the paramedics. So that way it will be more efficient. Otherwise, you are going to get fatigued, and definitely after some time you won't be able to administer. That's the second thing that you need to keep in mind. And third thing is like, even if you're not sure whether, because see, we have a protocol, we just check the pulse and see sometimes if the patient has pulse, and only if there is no pulse, we usually administer CPR because it's a very, how do I say, it's like, it's not how you see it, it causes a lot of trauma to the patient. But still, in spite of that, do not think like second time if you think that the patient has undergone arrest, is not breathing properly, or if you cannot feel the heartbeat, just go for it. So for that, make sure like you are trained in a way, at least watch videos. Even if you can't go for proper contact classes, that would be the best because in contact classes you might have mannequins and there will be a provider who shows you the correct technique and how to do it, the rate, because you usually give it, there's a rate and rhythm to which you give the CPR. All that will be taught by the provider. So definitely it would be a better choice to go for a contact class. If not, at least watch videos. So that way you know what to do. And another thing, what apart from CPR, there is something called as AED, automated defibrillators, basically. So what they do is whatever you must have seen in movies, like shocks being given, right? Like yeah, you shock the patient. So instead of a human or a doctor doing it, this is something which a machine does automatically. So the machine itself will assess the rhythm of the patient, and if it is a shockable rhythm, then the shock will be provided by the machine. But there is a simple thing: you should know how to use the machine. Mostly it is very standard, but there are so many, there are so many manufacturers again. So you should know, like, how to pay. There are two paths, you have to place on both sides of your chest. And you should know, like, you should switch it on, what to do. See, it's very easy. It is not as complicated like it seems. It's very easy, but you need to have like a basic idea on it. So, you know how to give CPR and also how to use the basic AED. All these things have to be, yeah, maybe you can take a class because, like I said, automated external defibrillator, the AEDs are also something which can save lives. So you should have a rough idea on how to go about it.
And not to panic, not to be scared, calm our mind, and
Yeah,
then
that comes with everything. That's for any kind of situations. Try to stay as calm as you can. Like I said, you cannot be 100% calm because even sometimes we doctors also we when something happens, we also have the adrenaline rush. Okay, but so definitely I can understand for a non-medical person how it is going to be, but you're doing it in the best interest of the patient, so you don't have to worry about, okay, am I doing wrong? So definitely some things can be wrong for the patient. Like, for example, if there is a road traffic accident and suppose maybe they have an injury at the neck, if there is any fractures in the neck, if at all it is not mobilized, I mean, like, you're not supposed to move the neck ideally. You're supposed to keep it like still, and then you are supposed to transport the patient. Because sometimes if there is a fracture and if the nerves are getting compressed because of the movement, maybe the patient can get paralyzed. So there are situations like that. So that is the reason why you need to be aware of such situations, and you should be well versed on what to do in situations like this. Yeah.
Okay, what can we do when someone collapses in public place? Maybe you can share three things that we should focus on in this kind of situation.
Okay, so I'm just going to repeat the same thing because it's the same thing that you need to do. So, like I said, first make sure that you are safe, the scene is safe. Okay, so to administer any kind of treatment, the scene should be safe. So, that is the number one thing, safety, the scene safety. Second thing is just check if the patient was collapsed, is he responding or not? Because sometimes it might be nothing, it might be something small. I'm not saying it's a small thing, but make sure the patient is responding. Like I said, if the patient is not responding, then you start CPR. If the patient is okay, probably sometimes they're dehydrated, then you can do something else. But if the patient has collapsed with no pulse, the patient not breathing, you start CPR. So second thing is to assess the patient, just to see how the patient is. Third thing would be again call for help because it's not a one person job. Even in the hospital, when we manage emergencies and or arrests, it's not a one person job. We have a team doing the whole thing. So everybody is designated each roles and it's worked as a team. So same thing, you cannot expect a non-medical person to do everything by himself or herself. So make sure there is somebody to help you out at the spot. So these three things I would say. So just make sure the scene is safe, make sure see if the patient is responding or not. And the third thing would be call for help. Because calling for help is very vital. It's not something trivial. It's as important as administering the first aid. So these three things would be at the top of my head.
Thank you so much for this.
Yeah.
As a young doctor, what emergency situation affected you the most in your career so far?
There has been so many, but one thing I think which is haunted me a bit probably could be there was this young boy. He was working as like an electrician who was working at the electrical line. Very young boy, actually. I think he was 18 or 19 probably. And again, he got an electric shock because of the high voltage wires and all that. And he was brought to the hospital very late. I am not sure why, because I don't know what is the reason, but he was brought to the hospital very late. And apparently, from one of the bystanders, I got to know like he was alive for quite some time. It was not like suddenly he arrested. Yeah, you can have a cardiac arrest sometimes, because of the shock, and maybe it could be anything. But he was alive for quite some time. But because there was no prompt medical attention because nobody, I don't know, there was a delay from the first from the first responders who saw him. They did not call the ambulance. They tried to do something. I don't know what, but by the time he was brought up, and maybe 5 or 10 minutes before that, he passed away. So this is something which really haunted me for some time because I felt, okay, first of all, he was very young. It's not an age to die, and he did not deserve that. Because probably if people had been a little more proactive in a situation like that, we could have saved him. So that's one thing I was a little upset about. Yeah.
You're very brave to be a doctor, so young doctor.
All doctors are.
All doctors are, yeah. And we should all be grateful to have you all. So, thank you so much for this beautiful session and for all the things that you shared with us, which will really help us not to panic, to be calm, to call for help, and all these maybe small tips and tricks which are really vital in these kind of situations. And if you could leave maybe for our viewers with one message about first aid, what should they remember?
So I would just quote Mohanji, to be honest, because see, I would say for any situations, I mean, emergencies, medical emergencies, or any other situations in life, be alert, be active, and be aware, because these three things is going to take you a long way in most situations in life. Because because you need to be alert about things happening around you. Maybe there is somebody collapsing, and you might just be walking, and maybe you saw that, but you are not aware on what to do, because sometimes like I said before, sometimes because you're too scared, because you don't know what to do, because of the knowledge gap that we have, maybe you might not do anything. And third thing, you know it, but you're just scared, and you're not. You need to be active about it. You need to proactively do something, like I told you about. I shared about the story. They proactively did something, we could have saved a life. So these three things in mind, probably that will help a lot. So be alert, be active, be aware about your surroundings, and yeah, that will do the job, I guess.
Alert, aware, and active. That's who we are.
Yeah, yeah,
Thank you for
yeah.
being in a podcast Youth for Youth by Mohanji Youth Club. We hope to have you again. And
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much, Anthony.
Yes.